I'm here to present about the DaRe2THINK trial. And the DaRe2THINK trial is a pragmatic clinical trial that is using healthcare data to make it a lot more simple to deliver this randomized control trial. The trial is a partnership between the University of Birmingham and Clinical Practice Research Data Link, with collaborations from all of these collaborators, including HDR. Okay, so just a very quick introduction about myself. I've briefly done it, but I'm trial team manager at the Institute of Cardiovascular Science in the University of Birmingham and project manager for the DaRe2THINK trial, also studying for a PhD. But my sort of research experience comes from 7 years of delivering clinical trials in both primary and secondary care, and that spans both hospital trusts in the Midlands, universities in the Midlands, and also the clinical research network in the Midlands, with the last 2 years really focusing on the delivery of a digital trial. However, DaRe2THINK is obviously a collaboration between many investigators, and that includes our chief investigator, which is Professor Deepak Kotecha, who works at the University of Birmingham, our co-chief investigator being Dr. David Shukla, who is the clinical research specialty lead at the CRM West Midlands, and the research delivery team that spans both the University of Birmingham and University Hospitals Birmingham, one of which is Sarah Rank, who's also on the call. So it's great to see here. Great. So electronic healthcare records are now the norm in both primary and secondary care providers in the UK, and they have allowed complex medical data to be standardized into systems of clinical codes that enable easier storage, access, and linkage of data across healthcare providers. Observational research has obviously long benefited from the increased usage of electronic healthcare records, but large-scale randomized control trials are yet to take advantage of these. The DaRe2THINK trial is looking to take advantage of the rapidly evolving technology and coding systems and couple this with the complete EHR coverage to enable a randomized control trial within NHS primary care practice. So, in order to test this, we have chosen what we believe is a clear public health concern, and that is atrial fibrillation. So atrial fibrillation is the world's most common heart rhythm disorder and is expected to increase in prevalence over the next few decades, thanks to an aging population, increase in comorbidities, and increase in screening thanks to the development of innovations such as smartwatches that can now measure a person's heart rhythm at any time. Atrial fibrillation is linked to an increased risk of blood clots that can lead to clinically significant stroke and other thromboembolic events. Further evidence is now building that subclinical thromboembolisms caused by AF can also lead to cognitive decline and the development of vascular dementia. This process starting earlier and in lower risk individuals than are currently treated for blood clots. So running in primary care practices in England and in partnership with Clinical Practice Research Data Link, we are able to embed traditional clinical trial process within routine NHS practice. So first of all, we are able to remotely screen pseudo-anonymized primary care data for our inclusion-exclusion criteria and identify potentially eligible patients in GP practice that contribute to CPRD's primary care database. We can then target our approach, recruiting only practices with a large number of patients, and then using our dedicated online platform, patients are then able to review the list of potentially eligible patients that we provide to them against a number of our criteria, with the patient list regularly being updated centrally by ourselves, taking that administration away from GP practices. GP practices are then able to invite patients using their inbuilt practice systems, including email, text message, or the good old-fashioned letter. Patients are then able to remotely consent to take part in the study through our self-designed remote e-consent platform. So GP practice are then able to randomize their own patients using our dedicated online system, with all medication, prescription, and medicine management then embedded fully in the NHS, and not changing normal clinical practice. Now, once patients are randomized to the study, that is, as I like to say, 99% of their research work done. We are able to collect all of our outcome data through the extraction of their coded primary care record and the linkage to their secondary care record as well, giving us almost the entirety of that patient's record. We also use technological advancements to send out remote patient-reported outcome measures and cognitive function tests directly to patients via text message and email. Now, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware, one of the crucial parts of clinical trials, and potentially one of the most onerous parts of clinical trials for sites, is the reporting of serious adverse events in recruited patients. Now, we've again been able to innovate in this, almost turning that traditional process on its head, as we're actually able to search a patient's record for potential safety events and actually report that to sites rather than the old-fashioned other way around. Now, all of these innovations have been recognised by our government, and we were mentioned in the Saving and Improving Lives and the Future Clinical Research for all of these innovations. So, now, as I mentioned earlier, healthcare data is stored as lists of medical codes. Now, in order to make DaRe2THINK transparent and reproducible, the team, myself, Sarah, and the rest of the team actually designed a systematic method to develop lists of medical codes that can be used to extract and process data in the trial. So DaRe2THINK collects data from three sources. So the first is CPRD's Orum's primary care database, which stores the diagnosis, results, and intervention data using medical codes that are linked to SNOMED CT. They also store the prescription data, and that's linked to the DMD. CPRD are then able to provide linkage to separate care data sets, including their health episode statistics data, and also the ONS mortality data. And this seems to give us the entirety of the patient's healthcare usage for the course of the trial. Now, in order to make sure that we actually developed code lists that were workable and actually represented the true use of codes in the system, we, and this very key with Sarah's work, actually developed a 4-stage process for developing code lists. So the first stage of that was actually we brought together clinicians, health data scientists, and experts in clinical coding to actually define our inclusion-exclusion criteria outcomes as medical codes and phenotypes linked to medical codes. Sarah and our team were then able to actually systematically search across sources to find, using those predefined terms, and also building in the children and sibling codes using the inbuilt data hierarchy that we find in clinical coding systems. We're also able to search the published literature and website searches to really get a broad spectrum of clinical codes. Now, once those clinical codes were extracted, we then designed an iterative clinical review process where 2 independent clinicians then reviewed that list of clinical codes to check their clinical effectiveness. These were then reviewed for consensus and actually then passed on to senior clinical colleagues for actual review. This process is continuing. Absolutely, while we're still running the trial, we are still comparing our code lists against relevant published literature, and we are planning on running a study within a trial that is actually testing the applicability of these codes in university hospitals at Birmingham. Now, in terms of the work that is done, we actually were able to review over 1 million codes for this trial before. And that include over 1 million primary care codes, over 15,000 secondary care codes, and over 41 published papers. This led to the creation of 77 code lists across the different sections of our trial, which include our selection criteria, where we search the primary care database, the baseline characteristics of patients recruited, again, that comes from that primary care database, outcome measures, which comes from both primary and secondary care, and our safety events that again come from both primary and secondary care. Now, I will not be going into every one of these code lists today, and all of our code lists have been published along with this systematic approach of developing those in the European Heart Journal. These are already being used by colleagues across England. We've got people in Oxford who have already fed back potential new codes to include. So as I said, that iterative process is ongoing, but it really seems to be having a real good benefit to the wider research landscape. Now I wanted to sort of talk about actually the take-home lessons from delivering a clinical trial using electronic healthcare records. So first of all, it's clear that there is a desire in primary care to take part in research and data-enabled clinical trials. So we've actually, since this diagram has been created, we've now actually recruited over 400 practices, with actually 28% of those practices invited to take part actually signing up. The targeted approach, whereby we only actually invite practices that we're sure will be able to recruit patients, seems to have worked, because actually our percentage of practices that recruit to our trial is higher than compared to other primary care clinical trials that are ongoing at the moment. Now, absolutely, there's further work that needs to be done, and we are working to innovate the way actually that we take a practice from saying yes, they want to take part, to actually actively screening, and we're looking at innovative solutions to improve that practice sign-up. Now, when it comes to actually patient recruitment, patients, again, are also keen to take part in a trial such as this, with us finding that actually that research question of the potential of treating dementia, and also the fact that it's easier for them to take part. They don't actually have to leave their house to take part in this trial. And actually, we get a really great response, with 17% of those invited actually agreeing to take part. Now, absolutely, the research environment in the NHS is still very difficult. We live in a post-COVID world where the NHS capacity is massively stretched. And absolutely, we're always looking to improve our patient recruitment. And as you can see, we've got over 1,000 patients that we've sent an invite out that we're just waiting on their response. And therefore, we're working on innovations to actually improve that. So just moving on. Actually, so how does DaRe2THINK sit into the wider landscape? So first of all, regulators are now are keeping an eye out for actually healthcare data related trials, and Professor Kotecha has worked with the regulators, the MHRA, EMA, and the US FDA actually to develop the Code EHR framework. And this is a best practice framework that is for the use of structured EHR data for clinical research. And DaRe2THINK is absolutely at the vanguard of this, and really used as an exemplar of how we can actually make these trials actually reproducible. Okay. First of all, and I'm sure you're keen and absolutely Alastair's work in this, and the fact that public engagement in the design of research is key, especially as we move into more data-enabled trials. We really need to bring patients with us. Now, DaRe2THINK has followed this positive roadmap, and actually some of our PPI team have developed this and published this. And absolutely, it is being taken on as a method of making sure that patients are included in the development of our research projects. Finally, and what this is key in the wider landscape, and actually that development of the West Midlands secure data environment. So part of that funding is to actually develop an innovative clinical trial, and absolutely we'll be using DaRe2THINK to base that clinical trial on, and use the things that we've learned in there to actually help deliver that a randomized clinical trial using the SD infrastructure. Great. So that leaves me just to finish. Is there any questions? You can absolutely, all of those links that you can find me on as well.